These piss me off because they are not stabilizers. Now don't get me wrong, I understand that these little things come with every kind of kit bow on the market. You got the Stinger from PSE, not a stabilizer, vibration dampener. You've got one of the most popular beginner kit bows, the Cruiser G3 from Bear, not a stabilizer, vibration dampener. If that, this one is kind of just, you don't need it at all. Now don't get me wrong guys, I am not knocking you if you have one of these. I just want to educate you that you could be getting so much more out of your bows if you just switch these out for an actual stabilizer. As the name implies, it is there to stabilize the bow, but a lot of people don't understand how it does that. Essentially, what I like to do in any kind of thing from firearms to archery, I want to learn from the guys that compete with the tool, whether it's a gun or a bow, because they generally are looking for the maximum amount of output from their gear in terms of accuracy and performance. So I look at a competition archer and I say, why do they get that weight so far away from their hand? They're using like 30 to 33 inch bars. Well, it's because the further away you get the weight from the hand, the slower your pin movement is, the more forgiving the bow is, and the less torque and movement from your bow hand feeds into the bow itself. It makes everything slow and smooth. But for us bow hunters, that doesn't make sense. And so you're probably saying, Travis, we cannot go out with a 30 or 33 inch stab, and I 1000% agree. So let's look at some hybrids, which will be a vibration dampener and a stabilizer, versus ones that are just about stabilization itself. And I also want to get into vibration because I think it's commonly misunderstood. It's put on a very high pedestal, and I'd like to deconstruct why I don't really care about vibration as much as I care about the stabilization that I'm getting from my stab in itself. So since I am shooting Hoyt for this hunting season, I thought let's start with their stabilizers that they brought out this year, because I think it's a great idea of how hybrid stabilizers work, and I think they function phenomenally. We've got the Stealth Pro series. It's a 2025 stabilizer from Hoyt, just released this year, and essentially what a hybrid is a very obvious moving mechanism in the front of the stab, usually rubber, with weights on the other side of that to the furthest tip of the stabilizer. And essentially what happens is when that bow goes off and the bow vibrates, because obviously, I mean, it's throwing an arrow at 250 to 300 feet per second, a lot of that vibration in the bow is absorbed into these vibration dampeners. And I will say something when I get into the other stabilizers that I'm going to run going forward, these really do reduce the vibration in the bow significantly. But let's get them on and let's show you how they work. While I'm at it, guys, and just setting it up, I also want to just touch on sidebars. It's something that's very overlooked in the hunting community, especially in South Africa as a whole. If you're not running a quiver, you can kind of get away with it. But if you are running a quiver, 9 times out of 10, you are probably torquing that bow to bring the bubble in your bow sight center, because a lot of the weight of the bow is on the right or left-hand side of the bow, depending if you're right or left-handed. And so this sidebar here is my secret little weapon of not getting those left and right misses at longer distances, but even at short distances, if that bubble's not center, it can really affect impact points. So one thing I want to hit on is really get to your nearest pro shop, come to Magnum Archery, and try out putting a sidebar if you have a ton of weight on this side, because of your arrows, your quiver, your sight might be on the right hand side and you might not have an integrated rest, which means all the weight of your accessories is on the right hand side of the bow, and you're physically torquing that bow to bring your bubble back to center on the bow side. So I really recommend a sidebar is there, so that as you draw back, and if it's set up correctly, as you draw back, that bubble is dead center, and you barely have to do anything to the bow for that bubble to stay there as you're executing your shot. So I've got 4 ounces on the front, 2 ounces on the back, and I can really feel that the bow is quite light. Also, what's going to make a massive difference is I've got a 10-degree QD mount on here that drops that weight even further. And if you look at it, that weight is actually in line with my limb pocket. I like to get my weight as low as possible and within reason as far as possible with my hand, because what it's going to do is it's going to really just slow down all my movement that I feed into the bow. And it's not because I'm a bad shot. Every single person feeds movement and torque into a bow, and their stabilizer is going to allow it to just be a little bit more forgiving. So I'm going to pull back, and I just want to feel the movement that I get when aiming at a very small spot. So it bounces around a bit, and it's a bit sporadic because it's not very heavy and it's not very far from my hand. I'm going to execute here. So definitely a lot of feedback, a lot of movement. I don't mind the length, but I would want more weight. So before I switch out to something else, let's test how keeping a 10-inch stabilizer but adding weight to the front might affect it. But I would like to say this, almost zero vibration in the bow, because these two little vibration dampeners on the brand new Pro Style series is really taking all of that in. Very impressed so far. But let's increase the weight out front and see if we can make it more forgiving, even though we're not changing out the length, but just the weight. So because of this, the grub screw is actually too short. So I'm going to take it from another one that's got a nice long grub screw. As I'm adding these, I must just make a correction to myself. These are Quattro stabilizer weights, and these are actually 1.5 ounces each. And now we've added 5 of them in a row, make it nice and tight. It's almost causing almost no lean on this rubber dampener, which is quite nice. Normally rubber dampeners are quite soft and they can't handle this kind of weight. So I'm keen to see now, if I don't increase the length, but I increase the weight, will I still get the same results as I do with something like a 15-inch stabilizer? Let's give it a go. Drop it in on that QD. Got another arrow here. Oh, I can already feel that difference, which is quite nice. I can already feel the bias out front, which is what you always want. So before I get going again, you don't want to match the weight on your sidebar to your front bar because you want bias out front. If you equal them out or you try and stabilize the bow to be center on the hand, you've literally canceled out the point of stabilizers because now all the weight is pivoted on your hand again. So I really encourage you just putting out 1 or 1.5 to 2 ounces on the rear end and play with the angle until it balances out the bow perfectly, and then get as much weight as possible that you like, that feels comfortable on the front bar to create bias. Pull back here quick. Wow. Okay, so one, it's really nice to have vibration dampeners, even though vibration is not a factor that you should ever think of when it comes to accuracy, comfortability, and stabilization as a whole. But it is a nice factor because it's the after effect of a shot. But let's get into that quickly. So vibration, guys. Vibration is the action of the bow once the arrow has left the bow. So it doesn't factor into your accuracy, it doesn't factor into your consistency. Really, it's a feel thing more than anything else. It's after the arrow has left the bow, what the bow is doing in terms of vibration, and obviously all that energy dissipating after it's released through that arrow. So vibration is the last thing that I look at. It's a nice to have, a nice feel, but is not a factor in terms of your consistency and accuracy when you're shooting a bow. So I just want to get that out there. If I can find something that shoots better, holds more stable, and feels good, not from a comfortability side and vibration side, but an accuracy side, I'm going to choose that over vibration every day of the week. So to wrap up with this, before I move over to a 15-inch front bar and a 10-inch sidebar, I just want to make one statement. One, really like how it dampens the vibration, and definitely a massive difference keeping this setup, even though it's a short stabilizer, but chucking quite a bit of weight, 5 1.5 ounce weights out front. And what I really like is it's not torquing or bending that rubber dampener either, because it would be very weird if it's this like limp rubber because of all the weight. And I just want to remind you, what happens is as that bow wiggles and moves in your hand as the shot releases, this is countering that wiggle and movement in the bow and essentially cancelling it out. So it really does work. There's a lot of stabilizers like this. If you don't have a Hoyt bow and you don't want to run Hoyt accessories, a lot of vibration dampening / stabilizer hybrids out there that are really good. But again, get it as far away from your hand as possible. If you've got these lower stabilizer mounts closer to the limb pockets, use them. If you want to do a QD mount, use it. It really does. All of this adds up and makes a huge difference. But please do not go for a 5-inch little stabilizer out front with hardly any weight and think it's going to make a difference. You've wasted money and you haven't helped yourself in creating a more forgiving bow. So let's switch these out to the stabilizer setup that I've been playing around with this week and I'm really coming to love. We're just going to have to take QD mounts off and this whole weight bar off because it actually goes straight onto the other one. So 5 1.5 ounces on a 15-inch stabilizer. And remember, the further it's out, 5 ounces almost becomes heavier because it's levering over a longer distance, 15 inches versus 10 inches. So that 5 1.5 ounce plates are going to make more of a difference, even though it's the same weight, because it's further out away from the bow. Let's just put that QD mount on here as well. And the sidebar is a 10-inch sidebar. All of this is from Magnum. These are the Conquest Archery stabilizers, the Smackdown series, and I really like them. But remember, zero vibration dampening tech in them. They are just there to perform the practical job of a stabilizer, which is to distribute weight away from the hand, slow down that pin movement, and make the bow more forgiving. And that, guys, is the point of a stabilizer. And I want you guys to start prioritizing that when you're making these kinds of purchases, because over a long period of time, you are going to be wasting money when you could just jump the gun and get it right from the start. Right, so for a hunting setup, I get it. That is quite big, but I'm so used to it. I normally hunt with a 15-inch stabilizer. For me, this is no different than any other setup that I normally do, even if it's a longer axle-to-axle bow. But again, I must be honest, shooting now that 10-inch stab with that 5 1.5 ounce weights out front, it really did hold nice. But I have a feeling that nothing's going to outdo this without getting a bit more ridiculous and going longer. So pin movement is slow. Let me just not talk and shoot quick. Super slow. Definitely feel a bit more confident in pulling through my shot. And as of recently, I've gotten back into some target panic. And so that's why I actually wanted to address my stabilizers and see if I can slow down that pin movement so I can trust myself that even if that pin is coming on and off the target, I can continue pulling through my shot and executing that shot and it will hit its mark, even if that pin is floating on and off. But I find when my pin movement's sporadic, it just makes my target panic 10 times worse. And you don't want that in the bush, you don't want that in target either. But being a bow hunter, you really don't want that walk and stalk. You put multiple days on an animal, and when it comes to it, you can't hold that pin still because there's just nothing counterbalancing the movement that your hand is feeding into the bow. So guys, I hope this was helpful. I really want you guys to start diving into the reasons we run stabilizers. And if you can do anything for yourself, do yourself a favor and learn from people that do this kind of stuff competitively, because they nitpick everything to be as accurate and proficient as possible. And you can take those lessons and just tweak them to work for you as a bow hunter. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope it was helpful. See you on the next one. Peace.